This is a huge win for Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives. Prime Minister Mark Carney announced the EV mandate will be paused as the government conducts a 60-day review of the policy, and the mandate is being waived for 2026 models. The EV mandate was a Trudeau-era policy that required automakers to sell a minimum percentage of zero-emission vehicles, electric vehicles. For 2026, that sales target was 20%. Poilievre and the Conservatives have been calling for an end to the electric vehicle mandate for a hot minute now. It was a top target during the spring session of Parliament, and Poilievre made it a centerpiece of his nationwide pressure campaign. Here's why Mark Carney's announcement is a big win for the Conservatives. The Liberals actually stood behind the policy for a long time. There were many debates in the House of Commons about it. The Liberals defended the policy fiercely, arguing it was essential to meet Canada's climate goals. In June, they blocked a Conservative motion to scrap the 2035 gas vehicle ban, winning the vote 194 to 141. The automakers themselves warned the mandate was unrealistic. They cited falling EV sales and the end of the federal and provincial EV rebates and US tariffs. Some of you might remember that we had an EV rebate. That program offered up to $5,000 towards the purchase of a new electric vehicle and up to $2,500 on the purchase of a new plug-in hybrid. The federal rebate program was paused in January after running out of funding. Look, you guys come to this channel with a sharp mind and not just for reactionary nonsense. So let's go deeper. Was it a good idea to drop the EV mandate now? Well, let's talk about the economics of it. EV sales in Canada dropped sharply from 15% of new vehicle registrations in 2024 to just 9% in Q1 of 2025. There were also 5 consecutive months of falling EV sales before Mark Carney paused the EV mandate, with only 7.9% of new vehicles sold in June being electric. So on that point, it was making less and less sense. On the environmental side, the EV mandate was projected to prevent 362 megatons of greenhouse gas emissions and save Canada $36.7 billion in energy costs by 2050. It was a cornerstone of Canada's 2030 emissions reduction plan, aiming for a 40% reduction in emissions below 2005 levels. Pausing the mandate delays progress towards these goals and risks Canada falling behind global EV adoption trends, especially as Europe and California double down on electrification. Here's what I'll say to anybody who says this will impact Canada's climate goals. I think you're a hypocrite. And I'll tell you why. If you actually care about the environment, you would buy an EV regardless. You shouldn't need an EV mandate to do that. In fact, if enough consumers want an EV, the automakers actually have no choice but to give customers what they want. Also, if I hear one more person tell me about how expensive EVs are, I will lose my shit. Let me show you the math, okay? Let me show you the math. Over 10 years, an electric vehicle actually works out to be a lot cheaper than a gasoline car. Because think about it. Sure, an electric vehicle has a larger upfront cost. Here, I'm showing you a $42,000 electric vehicle, and you can probably get a regular gasoline car for maybe around $22K. The problem with a gasoline car is you now have to worry about fueling that thing, right? Say you spend $25K over 10 years. Charging an EV is cheap, relatively, especially in BC where I live. The infrastructure is also improving. So you spend significantly less on charging costs for your EV over 10 years. Okay, what about maintenance? You'll spend more on your gasoline car. That is almost guaranteed. EVs have fewer moving parts, no oil changes, and regenerative braking, which reduces wear. The last part I want to tell you about is depreciation and resale value. Electric vehicle batteries are actually getting better. Trust me, I know, because my actual career is in that industry. No, I didn't study politics in school. I'm actually a scientist. I just enjoy talking about politics. Anyways, batteries nowadays can maintain roughly 70 to 80% of their original range after 10 years. So provided you treat the rest of the car with some tender loving care and your battery isn't a recall or faulty, you could still get decent resale value on your EV after 10 years. In fact, the used EV market is growing right now. In the end, it works out in favor of electric vehicles. You will save significantly more over the long term, over 10 years. Actually, while we're here, let's address a few more lies you've been told. You probably heard Pierre Poilievre or somebody say EVs don't work in cold Canadian winters, and some people use that as a reason not to buy EVs in Canada. Here's the truth. EVs absolutely do work in Canadian winters. Yes, cold weather affects the driving range of electric vehicles. EVs can lose 15 to 40% of their range in sub-zero temperatures. This happens because batteries are chemical systems and cold slows down the reaction. Cabin heating in the winter also draws extra power. Gasoline cars have the advantage here because they just use engine heat, right? But guess what? Gas cars lose efficiency too in Canadian winters. They burn more fuel idling and warming up, and cold oil makes engines work harder. Here's something that silly goose who doesn't like EVs won't tell you. EVs will actually start more reliably in the cold. You know why? They have no engine to crank, no oil to thicken, no fuel lines to freeze. EVs start instantly, even in minus 30 degrees Celsius. Here's another crazy concept. Modern EVs come with battery preconditioning, which warms the battery before driving. So this can help keep those chemical reactions I told you about earlier. It can help keep them going. So you may not lose as much driving range as you think. Modern EVs also come with heated seats and steering wheels, which is more efficient than heating the whole cabin. The regenerative braking system also improves control on icy roads. You don't believe me? Here's some real world proof for you. Norway is one of the coldest countries in Europe. And fun fact, Norway has the highest EV adoption rate in the world. So, there go all your excuses. As I said, you do not need an EV mandate if you truly want an electric vehicle. Let's come back to Mark Carney. And I'll go even further. In terms of the broader strategy, I think if you're going to repeal the EV mandate, the sensible thing is to drop those 100% tariffs we have on electric vehicles from China. Personally, I think it makes no sense to keep those on. If we drop those tariffs, that could have the knock-on effect of getting the Chinese to drop their tariffs on Canadian canola and other agricultural products. I think the Liberals should do that without delay. The 100% tariffs on Chinese EVs was meant to protect Canada's investments in EV manufacturing. If we're stepping back from those policies, it makes zero sense, in my mind, to keep those tariffs on. Also, with the US going away from an integrated North American supply chain, what is the point, right? Here's something I didn't have on my bingo card, though. I just saw not so long ago that Pierre Poilievre opposes removing the 100% tariffs that Canada currently has on Chinese EVs.
Scott Moe had said yesterday that if it was up to him, Saskatchewan would remove the tariffs on EVs from Chinese EVs in hope that China might remove tariffs on the canola sector. If it was up to you, would you do the same thing?
No, I don't believe that is the right way to go. I think that, first of all, China wants these electric vehicles to be roving surveillance operations on our streets, and in 10 years, God forbid, there's a conflict, and then there's millions of those vehicles surveilling our population in our streets. That would be a strategic problem for our country. So I respect Scott Moe. He's a great premier. I just respectfully disagree with this point. What I would do instead is I would cancel the $1 billion loan the Liberals are giving under Mark Carney to buy Chinese-made ships. I would say to the dictators in Beijing, you are not going to be selling $1 billion of ships to our country when you are unlawfully and unfairly targeting our canola producers with tariffs.
And this blew my mind. I'm just saying. Poilievre directly contradicted Conservative premiers Scott Moe and Daniel Smith. Premier Scott Moe obviously wants to support the canola industry in his province. Daniel Smith obviously has interests in keeping oil and gas going. Pierre Poilievre has contradicted both of them here. He doesn't want to cancel those 100% tariffs on Chinese EVs, even though Canadian automakers are saying customers are not buying EVs right now. Poilievre wants to cancel the shipbuilding contract that BC Ferries has with China at the moment, and he wants to support the canola industry indefinitely with tariff revenue. That's the implication of what he's saying. Honestly, to me, there is a lot of contradiction here. If you truly believe no one wants EVs, it should make no difference if you let the Chinese send their cars here. So to be honest, I don't know what Pierre Poilievre's core strategy is here. What he is proposing is not a solution. Anyways, returning to Mark Carney, I will say, regardless of how Mark Carney tries to frame this, this is a retreat from a policy that the Liberals championed for a long time. It is a win for the Conservatives. Anyways, environmental activist group Greenpeace Canada was quick to criticize the EV mandate delay. Their senior energy strategist Keith Stewart said, "What was the point of electing Mark Carney when we get Pierre Poilievre's climate policy? We should be aligning with Europe, which is doubling down on renewable energy and electric vehicles, rather than bowing before Trump's attack on people and planet." Look, I would disagree. I think this is living to fight another day. There are hundreds of thousands of auto jobs in danger right now. We cannot continue to hemorrhage investments and jobs. The job market is absolutely trash right now. I know people who have been looking for jobs for 6 months at this point. It was one of the worst years for summer jobs that I have seen. For Poilievre, this is a huge political win. It validates his messaging and gives Conservatives momentum heading into the fall session of Parliament. I would hope that Poilievre and his Conservatives have not targeted the EV mandates because they were lobbied by the oil and gas industry, who will no doubt benefit from less EVs being sold. I would hope the oil giants have not been whispering in his ear. Anyways, it looks like the Conservatives have their eyes on the criminal code, and Mark Carney has admitted that his Liberals will be looking at that too in the fall session of Parliament. Last point I'll make as I come to the end of this video here, I will say one thing for Mark Carney. He has proven himself to be a pragmatic leader. Unlike Justin Trudeau in many ways, he could have stubbornly followed through with a lot of Trudeau-era policies. Instead, what we've seen is him actually undoing a lot of Trudeau's policies, and they're stacking up now. He cancelled the consumer carbon tax, the digital services tax, and now it is the EV mandate. He has allowed circumstances on the ground to dictate what needs to happen, and that's a good trait. Last thing you want in a crisis is someone who will stick to a path no matter what, especially when that path is leading to destruction. Anyways, what do you guys think? For Conservatives in the comments, I want to know if you feel alienated or left behind by Mark Carney's decisions. Is he leading with the steady hand you expected? I've got to say, I'm very nervous about the budget this fall. Some people are saying Canada might already be in a recession. We're going to have lots to talk about on this channel. So you guys subscribe so you stay in the conversation. Let me know what you want me to talk about next. I'll see you next time. Take care, you guys.